If you're a volleyball player who's dealing with knee pain, you want to learn how to maximize performance with nutrition, or you're just trying to figure out how flexible you're supposed to get as a volleyball player, then you're going to want to stick around for this episode of VBSC Q&A. This is my unscripted, kind of very raw YouTube video style where I just take questions from you guys and we talk about it. So it's basically just going to be me talking to you, looking down here at some notes a little bit as we go. But yeah, we're going to get into it really quick. On this channel, there's 3 types of content that I typically post. We do VBSC Q&A, which is this. I do my full workouts, which is basically me showing you exactly how I work out for volleyball. And then there is the VBSC podcast, which is where I'm on with my coaches or on with guests. And we just dive into topics in more of like kind of the team or like the Q&A type of format, which is going to be like a little bit different than something like this. So what I typically do for this is I will take comments or questions from you guys, and every week I will talk about them here. And typically those questions come from a few different places. Primarily they come from my community group, which is called Volleyball Workouts. That's where you can come and do all of my workouts, chat with me, be part of our community group, and do all of my volleyball workouts. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. I'll take them from the YouTube comments. So if you have a question you want answered on one of these videos, leave it down in the comments, or I'll take them from somewhere like Instagram as well. And that's typically kind of in the order of importance that I do them in. So again, if you have a comment, leave it down below and I'll answer it on next week's video. First question here, you talk a lot about training for jumper's knee, but what about other types of knee pain like patellofemoral pain syndrome, and what's the difference in training for that? So really, I like to break down volleyball knee pain into 2 separate things. There's jumper's knee / patella tendonitis, the tendon related things, which I talk about a lot. And then there is patellofemoral pain syndrome, also known as PFP, which in medical terms, they sort of say is just like everything that's not tendon related or jumper's knee. And it's a very ambiguous term. I don't love it, but it's not up to me. And it covers a lot of different things. And I have in the past suffered from both of those types of knee pain. Now I still have a little bit more of the PFP side of things, but I've actually completely fixed my jumper's knee. And the problem with PFP is it's just harder to deal with, especially like what I have, which is called chondromalacia. That is where the cartilage on the backside of your kneecap sort of just gets roughed up or chipped, or, you know, you can't really fix that, but you can mitigate the symptoms. So I'm going to talk about that here. A couple big things with that. One is a lot of it comes from kneecap tracking issues, where your kneecap will either be too far out, called laterally, or too far in, called medially. And then it starts to rub on stuff that it's not supposed to, can change some of your biomechanics. And that's going to be the kind of the root cause of a lot of these issues. So the first thing we want to figure out is what's causing that muscular imbalance. Is the muscles on the side of your legs too tight and the muscles on the inside, the medial side of your legs too weak, you know, so we can strengthen the VMO, we can stretch out the lateral aspects? Do you have some kind of like biomechanical issues where your feet are too far out and that causes your knees to kind of be in relation to your feet? Something like that. We want to identify kind of those postural imbalances and those muscular imbalances, and then we can start to work on that from there. It's not something I can really get into a lot of detail in this video, because if it is something you have, it's going to be a very personal style of that. Now, I can talk about with me, I have noticed recently, this is pretty interesting. I noticed it when I was doing bounding, which is like where you're jumping from one foot to the other, that my knee will go in and my foot will turn out when I do like a running cycle. That got me to start to pay attention to the fact that my knees do sort of naturally bow in a little bit more than I would like them to, and biomechanically like more than is efficient. So I have been working on that. It also seems like to counteract that, my patellas get pulled laterally slightly. And so I have had times where the musculature on the lateral aspects of my legs, the outside part of my leg, is very, very tight. And typically, you will see that a lot in volleyball players because that lateral musculature gets used a lot, and anything where we're very explosive, moving side to side. But the medial musculature, so like your adductors, your groin, that doesn't get used that much in volleyball, because those muscles primarily get used when we're bringing our legs together against resistance, which like doesn't happen in athletic movements. But then also like sprinting, our adductors get used a lot, and like deep squatting patterns, our adductors get used a lot. And that's not something we often do. Now that is something we can train. and should get trained, but it's not something that happens a lot with volleyball. So what we have to do is we have to train those in our actual weight training, because we don't get a lot of that in volleyball. So extra adductor work, anything you can do there, sprinting work, and then of course squatting. And then there is another medial muscle that is really important, which is the vastus medialis. That's that VMO, or that teardrop quad muscle that people like to talk about with knee pain. And this is why that can help with knee pain, because if a lot of that lateral musculature is pulling the kneecaps laterally, then a strong VMO can help balance that out and pull them more back to where they're supposed to be. So more medially, but back to the center. And you're going to train the VMO the most when you're doing something where your knee is over your toe, or where you're getting into a deep squat. That being said, that kind of leads into the next point. This is something that I heard recently that I had never really heard before, which is that deep squatting can actually be very beneficial for PFP, which to me, like, it didn't make sense initially, but it did, because it's like, you think of deep squatting being kind of hard on the knees. You know, it's like we'll do half squats or box squats to kind of keep pressure off of the knees. But then I started to think and notice that my PFP actually started to get worse when I solely focused on half squats and sort of avoided that pain. And then as soon as I started re-implementing deep squats, a lot of that really did go away. And part of it is just taking those tendons through a full range of motion, taking all of the knee musculature through a full range of motion, the mobility that's required to squat deep. And then there is those aspects of training the VMO, training the adductors, that really gets trained super, super well in that deep squat position. So just as a takeaway of things for this, some things that you can do if you're dealing with knee pain that is not tendon related, make sure you're squatting deep in a pain-free way. Make sure you're really stretching that lateral musculature, because it really gets overused in volleyball. And then spend some time working on your adductors. And then finally, take a look at kind of your walking mechanics, your gait mechanics. See if there's anything that can be fixed there. Start to stand with your feet a little bit more forward. You know, try to eliminate some of that duck-footed position that so many people get into these days. That's a whole other conversation. We're not going to get deep into the biomechanics here. But and then with the deep squats, you can do things like tempo squats. So you can either do slow eccentrics, or you can do actually slow squats where you're going down for 6 seconds and then up for 6 seconds in whatever kind of like pain-free aspect you can. It doesn't have to be heavy, but just make sure you're training that knee through the full range of motion. Hopefully that was helpful. Question number 2, do volleyball players need to be flexible? I've been told that if you're too flexible, it could negatively affect your vertical jump. So 2 aspects there. To answer the first part of the question, do volleyball players need to be flexible? The answer is yes. Volleyball players need to actually be extremely flexible in both the upper body and the lower body. So let's start with the upper body first. This all just comes down to arm swing as well as jump mechanics. So when we're looking at the arm swing, we obviously need a very large amount of torso rotation, thoracic rotation, so we can get our hip and shoulder separation where my hip is forward, but my shoulder is still back. We need a really good amount of shoulder flexion through here. We can get our arm way back, and the external rotation where we can get our hand back behind our elbow, where then it can snap through. So in the arm swing, I don't think there's any debate that your arm needs to be really quite flexible to properly go through a good arm swing from all those things, especially the rotation, the external rotation, everything like that. From the lower body, a lot of people get dissuaded from doing flexibility because there's this realistically bogus research about, flexibility or stretching before you go play is going to negatively affect your vertical, or all these different types of things. Like, there's some minor truths to that. Like, if you do really long-term, like long duration stretching, and then you hop right onto the volleyball court, then yes, that can negatively affect your vertical. But if you do it the day before and then you go through your life, you do a proper warm-up, you do a bunch of explosive movements, then no, it's not going to have any effect. If you take it to the extreme, sure. If you're like super crazy flexible, maybe that can affect your vertical. I mean, if you look at gymnasts, like, they jump stupidly high and they're the most flexible athletes. So in general, I really just wouldn't worry about it. Now, from the jump perspective, jump technique, it requires less flexibility, but you think of like a big penultimate step. You do have to get a lot of length to that penultimate step if you want to maximize your jump height. That does require a decent amount of hip flexor flexibility, a decent amount of just hip flexibility across the board. And there has been some research showing that stretching your hip flexors can actually help increase your vertical. I'll see if I can find that. It has been a while. Also, to the upper body side of jumping technique, being able to get your arms back in full extension when you go through the jump pattern. So torso is vertical and arms are all the way back. That requires a decent amount of flexibility through here. So there's that component there. And then one of the most important for the lower body is defensive positions. So getting into passing positions, making digs, diving for balls, and just being able to contort your body in the way that you need to make defensive plays. You are much less injury prone when you have really high levels of flexibility and you can get into those deep positions. You're going to make more plays. You're going to make more accurate plays, and you're going to be healthier and have better longevity if you have super flexible hips, hamstrings, knees, and internal and external rotation, you know, all those different types of things. Flexibility plays a really big part to that. And so what you want to do if you're looking to increase your flexibility, it's something you can do every day if you're tight. Stretch your hips, stretch your hip flexors, stretch your hamstrings, do your thoracic rotations. Try to hold stretches for at least 2 minutes. This is a big mistake people make with flexibility, is they'll hold a stretch for like 30 seconds and then wonder why they're never getting any more flexible. So you do need to realistically hold it for like 2 minutes at a time to make longer term changes to your ability to be flexible and, you know, the muscle length. The muscle don't change length. Anyway, we don't have to get deep into the physiology there. Hold it for 2 minutes on each one. It's not going to have a downside. If you're doing it before you play, just make sure you do a good dynamic warm up, you know, muscle activation stuff, explosive stuff, whatever you want to call it. Do that before you play. And then question 3, we are only going to do 3 questions today. What is the best pre-volleyball snack or meal so that I can maximize performance without having an energy crash? And this is a really good question. Volleyball nutrition is something that I am like very passionate about. I spent a lot of time looking at what it's going to take to maximize performance. And so I'll tell you kind of the broad thoughts on it and then give you some examples. So when it really comes down to it, the primary fuel source that we use for volleyball is carbohydrates. So we need to eat a pretty decent amount of carbohydrates, especially before we go play, if we want to maximize performance. So people are like, volleyball players are like, I'm going to do low carb, I'm going to do keto, and their performance just suffers. I mean, if you can get yourself in ketosis and stay there, maybe, but it's way easier to just not and just eat a lot of carbs before you play, and you will be better at volleyball. So if you are, let's say you're on a calorie neutral, right? And you're just like not trying to gain weight, you're not trying to lose weight, just eat extra carbs before you go play. If you are calorie surplus, you're trying to gain weight, you should be just eating a lot of carbs throughout the day. If you are in a calorie deficit and you are working on losing weight, it's really important that you eat carbs before you go play. So, you know, maybe an hour or so before you go, have like kind of a carb heavy thing that I'll talk about in a little bit. And then have some carbohydrates with you when you are playing, primarily in like a very fast digesting or liquid form. Okay, so a couple really big examples that I like. My go-to is some type of oatmeal bowl. So yesterday I had my league. About an hour and a half before I went to my league, I mixed a packet of oatmeal, or typically like a third cup of oatmeal, with some peanut butter, some frozen blueberries. I microwaved that up, make sure it's all kind of melted and together, and then I put honey on top of that. And that is a really good balance of like slower digesting carbs with the oatmeal, faster digesting carbs with the honey. You're getting good energy from fruit, you're getting fiber, you're getting everything you need for a high level of performance. That is a really good one. I like bananas with peanut butter, rice cakes with peanut butter and honey is really good. That's a little bit more on the faster digesting side. You can have kind of before you go. But having like a lower fat, lower protein, high carb meal or snack about an hour to an hour and a half before you go play. And then if you need to, you know, on your way or when you get there, I really like to have bananas. But my go-to is honey. I will keep, I don't know if I have any. Yep. In my gym bag, I have honey that I keep with me. And so it's like when I go to the gym or when I play volleyball, I just have that. If I'm feeling like my energy is really low, I'll just take a squirt of honey. You're getting sugar in its fastest digesting form. It starts to digest directly in your mouth and gets into your system really, really quickly. Orange juice can work. Gatorade is underdosed, but like it's better than not. And I've even done like candy bars. So it's like, what's the sugariest candy bar that I can have? Because like if I'm on a diet and I'm gonna eat a candy bar, I'm gonna do it when I'm playing. So like a Milky Way bar, a Snickers bar, something like that. I've had extremely high levels of performance when doing that because you're just refilling all of that energy that you're burning up when you play. So other pre-volleyball snacks I like, those are really the big ones. The oatmeal bowl is definitely my go-to. Rice cakes with peanut butter and honey, always good, or peanut butter and jelly, always good. Anything, fruit with peanut butter, apple with peanut butter, banana with peanut butter, and you trail mix, something that can kind of slow down the digestion a little bit. Those are really my go-tos. So again, if your goal is to maximize performance without the energy crash, maximize performance by making sure you're getting the carbohydrates in ahead of time and getting it into your system to the point where it can be used, is not still sitting in your stomach. And then avoiding the crashes, having some carbohydrates with you when you are playing. That being said, to help avoid those crashes, you don't want to do like a really fast digesting source of sugar like 20 minutes before, 30 minutes before, because then what's going to happen is if it's really fast digesting, your blood sugar is going to rise, you're going to release insulin, then your blood sugar is going to crash, and then you're going to have very low energy right in time to play. So you want to avoid getting like really sugary, like too far out. It has to be like directly before or during your activity if you really want to maximize performance there. So that is going to be all the questions for today. Again, if you do have questions, I pull these from 3 places. The first place is my community group, my workout group called Volleyball Workouts. In that community group, you get access to 10 different workout programs that are all volleyball specific, all created by me. You get access to a community group where you can post your workout videos, you can post your volleyball videos, you can ask me questions, and I post in there every single day. We also do a weekly call where you can get on live with me on Tuesday nights and ask questions, go through film, whatever it might be. Right now, with the link that's in the description, you can do a 7-day free trial, and then after that, it is only $49 a month, which is an absolute steal for everything you're getting. I'm honestly considering on doubling the price of that. And so you can check the link in the description for a 7-day free trial to see if it's a good fit. Second place I get it from is from the YouTube comments. So if you have a question that you want me to answer on next week's video, drop it down in the comments below, and I will prioritize that right behind the community. And then also if someone DMs me on Instagram, or sometimes I'll do like the posts on my Instagram stories asking for questions, things like that, that would be kind of the tertiary or the third source I would go to. So again, leave that comment down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video. I try to post 3 videos a week. That's really my goal. 1 of these, 1 podcast, and then 1 full workout video. So hopefully you're into the volleyball training type of content. If you have other ideas for videos, leave them down below, and I'll see you on the next one.